Hi, everyone. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for being here. Very excited for this lovely conversation. We have a diverse group, as the MC rightly mentioned. For starters, I want to start this conversation off with the big picture, right? Pranav, I'm going to start with you. You've been part of the Silicon Valley ecosystem. What observations do you have about the current state of AI enthusiasm there, and how do you compare it to that in India?
Okay, first of all, thanks. It's an honor to be part of this panel with all of those people, and of course the other people. I personally feel that I've been in part of the journey of a lot of technological revolutions, like from smartphones to wearables and now AI and a lot more other spaces. I don't see major difference now as much that I used to see before Silicon Valley or here concepts-wise, or even any mental differences that, okay, there is a more talent there versus here. Resources, yes. I think there are still some resources challenges, or I would say the differences that we can definitely see. But I see more and more enthusiasm towards building localized, or I would say globalized kind of companies here more than what I'm because I'm also part of the Korea market or Japan market, and I've seen those markets. I see this is an epicenter of this innovation that is happening now. I'm really happy about seeing that.
That's great to hear. Ashish, coming to you, tell me about your thoughts of the same, and what do you think are some opportunities or challenges that you see in order to possibly bridge some gaps that exist?
So I guess you want me to talk about enthusiasm, the questions you're asking before?
Yeah.
So I'm probably not the best person to answer this question because I'm not as familiar with the AI activity in India, but I'll give two specific data points. But first, I actually want to talk about the change in AI enthusiasm in the Silicon Valley itself. Okay. Which is dramatic.
Before you get there, am I getting this right? Are you coming to India after 16 years? Is that?
Yes. So the immigration, they couldn't find any stamp in my existing passport and my previous one. So thank you. First of all,
yes,
I'm delighted to be here.
What an honor to have you
and
back.
Thank you, Accel, for actually having my picture up on your event page, so I could tell them that I'm here for a real reason. I'm not here to steal victory, a cricket victory, or anything like that. So yeah.
Wow.
But
Sorry,
so what? It's been about a decade since the transformer, the model that my collaborators and I built, and I would say that there's, to me personally, as I think companies, or at least the company that I'm trying to build at Accel, we want to build open science frontier models. Companies are less about models as they are about kind of factories for revolutionary ideas, being able to take courageous bets, executing, having a sense of urgency, and then pushing technology, right? I think when we started, I think there is a lot of enthusiasm to have some of these revolutionary ideas come out of startups now than just large labs. And in fact, what's interesting is when I was a Google brain at the time of the transformer, there were a reasonable number of groups that were capable of such revolutionary ideas, but all of them in large companies, and now barely any of those are actually in these large labs. Most of them have kind of migrated to startups. So what does that mean? So of course, just that trend itself, and also I think that the timelines. I think startups have an incredible sense of. They force you to adopt the right timelines for progress in AI. Now, my exposure to Indian AI has been through two brilliant individuals. They're starting a company, TurboML, and I thought they're so sharp that heck, they could be some of the best. They could be some of the best masters of the AI craft. Doing foundational research work. So I personally think that there is no. I don't think that there is any. There's any shortage of bright people, of course. The second, maybe this is a slight complaint, the term sovereign AI is often used as a muted AI. I think that we should just here build the best models in the world, not just models for the region. And I've been hearing that across the program, so I'm happy to hear that. But typically, sovereign AI is referred to as somewhat less intelligent. Heck, why would we ever do such a thing, right? So anyways, extremely enthusiastic, as you can see. Yeah.
Yes, yes, absolutely. Mitesh, coming to you, tell me about your observations of the differences in AI adoption and application, as compared to Silicon Valley versus India.
Yeah. So I think,
Is that?
yeah, thank you. Yeah. So I think my view based on my limited knowledge of things is that I think in Silicon Valley there is much more euphoria around AI as compared to India, where I think we are taking a much more measured approach is what I feel.
Okay.
And sort of this goes back to how India operates, right? I mean, that's, I think, at the core of it. In the West, I think if you have something really good, you will find customers who are willing to pay a premium for that.
Yeah.
Right? But in India, it doesn't work that way, right? So just look at the kind of plans that Netflix and others have to have in India.
Yeah.
199 rupees for one device, two devices, and we try to optimize it, right? If we try to optimize even when we have the ability to pay, and even when we see value in what is being offered, right? But in the West, if you're building something for a market, you have a prior, right, a higher probability that
Yeah.
someone will be willing to pay a premium for that if I build something which is of high value. I think in India, startups have a harder time because even if they have a very good idea, a very good product, I think finding a paying customer is very hard, right?
Very
Who is
true.
willing to pay that premium. And I think that reflects in the euphoria and the enthusiasm, right? So that's what my observation has been. Even on the adoption side, that carries on, right? I mean, because people want to get high value at low cost. Until that happens, people are ready to wait out this wave. It's okay, we'll get it a bit later. I'll wait for AI for 2 more years when it's at some price that I can afford and so on. So I think that is what the difference that I see.
Thank you. That's a very interesting point. We'll come back to that in just a bit. Prayank, I'd like to bring you into the conversation as an investor. What trends do you see when it comes to AI investment, particularly, between there and here?
In India?
I mean, if you can compare and draw some comparisons.
Well, I mean,
that
vast at the stage, but essentially all of us, I think investors are hungry for AI startups right now.
Yes.
Trying to find companies because this is a revolutionary technology which has come and everybody's trying to, hey, every part of the GDP, global GDP is going to get changed because of this. So if you ask me, like, for me, it's very exciting personally. I wake up and I like, today, what holds, the day holds some interesting startups to meet and what industry is going to get transformed. I'm looking at drug discovery, material sciences, space tech, defense tech, all impacted with AI. And it's like that surface area was not there a year back.
Yeah.
So, and actually, I would say a year back in India, most of these companies were not even available. A year back, most founders in India, and I remember this conversation, I was talking to a founder, he was saying, is this really your way of just, because I don't do AI, reducing my valuation? And I think today, the change is very different. I think it's harder for me now, the smartest founders are actually going to the valley and sitting there and saying, okay, this is where I'll find what is cutting edge. And they want me to come there and meet them, Indian founders. So it's a very smart move Indian founders are doing. So I'm actually quite excited. And I think almost every investor in India is trying to find and fund AI startups and deep tech startups. And maybe the two things are correlated now. The AI wave has led to the deep tech wave in India as well.
Yeah.
So it's actually quite exciting for us.
Just to follow up there, do you really think, though, that the funding for deep tech startups is enough? Or do you think there is much more that's needed?
No,
I know the government has a fund, but I mean,
no,
beyond
I think
that?
Abhishek said the right thing.
Yes.
A lot of patient capital is required.
Yes.
And Ashish made the point that all this funding was getting inside big companies and the big labs. They need long-term capital, and VCs don't operate like that. Investors don't operate like that.
Yes.
So I think we also are changing. We are writing larger checks. We are trying to be more patient. So in India, anyways, you have to be patient. So, but I think for fundamental breakthrough research, you need to be even more we have been for example, we have been investing in health tech for a very long time, fundamental research, and companies take 14, 15 years to get to their first vaccine, so I think it's kind of a similar pattern, and it feels a bit like that to me.
Yeah, absolutely. Pranav, coming back to you, earlier you mentioned resources and how possibly the Silicon Valley has a bit more of that. Can you possibly expand on that and probably talk a bit about what can we change in terms of mindset also within the India AI ecosystem?
Okay. I think I will cover 2 points on that one. One thing I want to continue what have been spoken before, that I will speak in Hindi, say "Ghar ki mulki dal barabar." I think that concept applies to India a lot. I've seen that not only in India but also many countries, same kind of experiences, that like same kind of technologies and experiences, but if it's coming from some outside startup, we see very differently and highly in this part of it. So the resources in this case here, it's mostly a perceived resources, I would say, because even like I don't think that now the second layer models, that is what is coming now. This is the second chapter of AI which is starting. It doesn't require like those 10,000 GPU infrastructure cloud anymore. What it requires is a different way of looking at it, different approaches, or different way of say, okay, now we will give you an experiment time or that thing. So I feel that the resources, like even just give an example for us, we build our own Sutra models 2 years back, train in our own infrastructure, own cloud cluster that we build in Silicon Valley. And people were not believing it. I mean, like literally, people were not believing it. $6 million spent. We built a very wonderful models, multilingual. As soon as DeepSeek moment came, people now started believing that a small startup can also build a powerful models and technologies part of it. So I would think it's more about the perception of the thing, as well as the resources in the perceived sense that need to be changed a little bit. It's not just about the GPUs or the capital or this part of it, but the ecosystem of the talent, and that maybe add that.
Very interesting. Nitesh, I'd like to bring you in here, with the work that you guys are doing with AI for Bharat. With India specifically, I mean, of course, Silicon Valley, we know the kind of applications that are there. Tell me about some India-centric applications and innovations that can happen, possibly in sectors like healthcare, education, agriculture, at scale with AI. Not only in making it accessible, but also affordable. And how's that going to happen?
Yeah. So I think in India, we'll really have to focus, as I said earlier, on delivering very high value at a very low cost and at population scale. And all three are very important in India, right? And I think the kind of things which they have already been said, right, in the education sector, healthcare sector, I think Priyank also mentioned in his opening speech, can we have a tutor for every student, every child in the country, and speaking in the language of that child? And that's a very India-specific problem, given the diversity that we have, not just in languages, but in dialects, also in accents, right? And can we make AI work for everyone? Right? So that's a problem that we'll have to solve. And we will run into this problem of how do we make it sustainable, right? How do we make it affordable? Otherwise, people are not going to pay for it, right? Of course, government subsidies and others are announced, right, through the India AI mission. The cost of building models is getting subsidized. To an extent, the cost of hosting models will get subsidized, right? But unless we really innovate on making solutions available on the edge so that a lot of cloud costs get taken off from the table, right? I think it will not really get driven at population scale. So making things work on the edge for a diverse set of languages, diverse set of demographics, for the diversity of India is something that we'll have to innovate on.
Yeah. And going back to the point that you made earlier, that a majority of the startups that are there, and there's some incredible startups that are also on our list that will be unveiled later today, they are doing some amazing work, right? But they're not, like you rightly said, finding the customers in India.
Yeah.
Their largest market happens to be something like the US. What do you do? What's the solution there?
No, I think I think a mix of solutions are required. I think government will have to play a very important role, right? And also, as Priyank mentioned, right, some of the VCs will have to be a bit patient with their capital, right, and make sure that these companies succeed, right? And as India grows and the paying capacity improves and so on, at some point these models will become viable, right? But AI by nature is a very experimental technology, right? So it's very hard to get it right at first try. So to keep experimenting. And India, our advantage is that we have the biggest experimental lab that anyone can have.
Can you bring your mic a little?
Sure. Oh, okay. So biggest lab that we can have, right, in terms of our population. Can we deploy things at population scale so that we can learn from these things? Right? In initial years, let's think about building, right, and getting this technology right, while in parallel we figure out how to make it sustainable. Just because today we are not being able to make it sustainable, if we stop investing in building it, I think we'll suffer in the long run, right? So that has to continue.
Great. Ashish, bringing you in here. Oh, you guys are still sharing a mic.
We're sharing a mic. We are talking about resources.
Yes.
Time sharing, yeah.
I think a big pain point through a series of conversations that we've had has been R&D, and particularly the lack of that in India. I've spoken to a bunch of people who are doing some incredible research in India, but my guess is that it would be only 5x, 10x of that in the US and in the Silicon Valley. As I also understand, there are specific R&D labs that are there in the US that are government funded, funded by many investors. Tell me a bit about, how R&D could possibly help India and why it's been, say, a game changer for the Silicon Valley.
I like this question because I ask this question. I asked this question even for Accel. How can R&D be beneficial to Accel as compared to well-capitalized startups, for example? And I think there is some commonality. So the way I approach this again is we're not building just models. We're essentially building you can say we're building a factory for models. That is, we every single day, our goal is to conduct a better experiment, and the models are just an outcome of that, right? So I'll give a very personal answer, how I approach this. For Accel, and in general, I think company leadership is extremely important. Extremely important. I think it was Vas that talked about combining liberal arts and technology, and I recall that Steve Jobs famously talked about this blend, and Steve was a fantastic leader, right? I think that I believe in the last 5 months we transitioned from being into more doing fundamental work. We've made incredible progress, and it's been fairly simple, having very clear convictions on the research ideas that you care about. I have strong convictions. For instance, when DeepSeek R1 came out, my entire team was, this is great, let's do reinforcement learning. I said, no, let 99% of the world's population run to reinforcement learning. We're actually going to drink from the source of truth, where all the capabilities are imbibed. That's pre-training. And we're going to do it far more efficiently by being rigorous, by taking these approaches, right? And so, and now again, Essential is a very personal mission. So, and this is I can get into I can labor in the details, but I think leadership is incredibly important. Convictions and focusing on a few directions and a sense of urgency. So you focus on a few directions, you see them through. If they don't work, iterate. But I think that over time, you will reach a state, a flow of research experimentation and create a ratified environment where it's inevitable. And sorry, this is maybe far more optimistic than I should be, but then I wouldn't be a founder otherwise. Yeah. But I think this is actually possible. Yeah. Yeah, and again, sorry, I answered it with respect to Essential. I think that many of the things I said would permeate across, when you're challenged with respect to resources and also hire incredible people, and if they have good ideas, let them run with it. Yeah. Absolutely.
I believe we have about 5 minutes, so I'm going to take some last thoughts from all of you, starting with you, Pranav. Tell me, what is one thing India must do to lead in AI globally?
I would say that we should not think that this AI chapter is over. I would say this is like a 1% of
Yeah.
so one of the things that I also keep seeing this one that model. I was a student of Marvin Minsky, completely different school of thinking of the AI. I really
It's
think
not his
that
fault.
there is-
It's not his fault, by the way. I mean, yeah, he was just a student of Marvin Minsky.
there's a lot more to discover and a lot more to happen in this world of AI. So India, rather than catching up the chapter 1 game, we can directly jump to chapter 2, chapter 3, and the future of the AI. I like even the chatbots, if you see, is a 5% of the AI, I would say. Like right now, even itself, what is going to make more difference in healthcare, in governance, in finance sector, is the quantitative models or even world models part of it. So we need to start thinking, and India has that opportunity to start thinking beyond catching up the language model game and do something differently, do something different altogether in AI space. And that's what I think India has the opportunity to do this thing, because we have awakened now. I mean, like we are now awake that and take a risk. I mean, isk hai to risk hai. I mean, like that's what kind of we should do that thing.
Yeah, but the LLMs is also equally important.
I'll just take maybe 15 more seconds. I was part of the journey from Samsung Galaxy S1 to all the way to the line when display screen started becoming smaller to bigger to bigger to bigger to bigger.
Wow.
After some level, it need to start again growing smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller. So the LLM right now at that era, like now we are not talking about which big parameters or how many parameters or what's the size of the model. We are in fact talking about which one is the more efficient, which one can run faster, which one is domain specific, and that part of it. So I really think that there is a lot more to this AI game than as we just seeing in a surface. And so language models is the thing of past, I would say, for me and for this world. Yeah.
Interesting. Priyank, your thoughts on, what is the one thing India must do?
Yeah, I think for India, population scale models, I think Mitesh alluded to it, Pranav alluded to it, like it has to be on the edge models.
Yes.
So it has to be smaller models. A couple of days ago, I put out a Kannada learning app. I didn't know any computer vision 3 days ago. No computer, zero. But with the cursor and all, I could develop something which people liked, and I was like, I'm a VC, I should be doing this, should not be doing this, somebody else should be doing this. It could have been done by a... So I think there are a lot of problems out there to be solved, tools are there available, but the moment there will be an inflection point, I truly think there is not enough AI on the mobile right now. The only models you have is like Gemma 3N and some of these, and a year later, all of our phones will be 100x smarter with AI, and then that will be a moment you will see a whole new wave of mobile AI coming in. It's like 13 years ago when I joined VC, one of my partners, Mahendran, every VC wanted to invest in a mobile company. And he was like, what is a mobile company? You are investing in a business, mobile is just a channel, right? So it's something like that, right? So what are the problems which are going to be solved? And something like that, inflection will happen, then all of us will be chasing mobile AI companies. So I think all founders in India don't need to think about what is happening now and what has happened in the past. They need to think 2 years ahead. And this is going to happen. And I need to invest my time and energy on that today so that when the moment arrives, I will make it happen. And I found founders to be very scared of spending that money once they raise money from VCs. Like, oh, but you're telling me to take risk and, what if my funding finishes off and dies? And I think the problem is, I tell my founders, you are in a war zone right now. This is the time to fight. And I gave you money, like I think somebody said this, we have given you bullets to fire, not to keep them and just
Well put. Yeah, that's well put. Ashish, what about you?
So it's amazing. I couldn't agree more with some of the answers, and I couldn't disagree more with some of the comments here as well.
Would love to
But
hear
first
both.
and foremost, yes, don't be a slave to the consensus. Choose your own path. I think it's incredibly important. I see this. I don't know. I don't want. I'll be controversial, and I'll call this dangerous obsession with small models. I think obsession with efficiency of building capabilities efficiently is important, but I don't necessarily think small models is. For me personally, I think it's about capabilities first, And I really appreciated this sort of observation that things had to grow bigger before they actually became smaller, because the first iPhone was not a small phone. It was just a better phone, right? And I also do completely agree that we're in the early stages. It's been a decade, and every year we take out, and again, this call it hubris or whatever. Every year we unshackle what these models or the transformers capable of, and I think there's so much more. But I think it should be a capability first perspective. If I actually knew, if an Oracle came to me and told me this is the model and it takes 1 trillion parameters, right? I mean, there's enough techniques where I can just train this on 2,000 GPUs. It'll just take a long time, but that'll be the perfect model, right? So if I knew the answer and it has to be big, well, so be it. I can just train it. It'll just take time, but I will be ahead of everyone because that's a perfect model. But again, yeah, I love this point about not being a slave to the consensus.
And I was asking you in the morning
Please.
that, is transform model, will something disrupt transform model? You know it. And he's like, Prank, I made it and I have zero idea who will disrupt it, right?
So he's offering a much stronger version of what I said, but let's move on. Yeah.
Yeah. I think one thing which is clear, right, which all of us said, is that we have to invest in the long term, right?
Yes.
And I would say the horizon is not 2 years, 5 years, 10 years. We should look at 50 years, right? And we shouldn't just focus narrow-mindedly on AI, but also look at elite things, peripheral things around it. For example, we really need to up our game in the chip world, right? We need to start making chips in India. That is going to be a very, very crucial factor for us. We also need to focus on education. We also need to focus on education, right? Upskilling AI talent in India, and that I mean across the board, not just high-end AI engineers or AI developers, but also upskilling our population in becoming friendly, usable, becoming comfortable in using AI, right? How does a layman use AI in every day, right? How do you build the confidence around that, right? Then also on the government side, a lot more work needs to be done on the policies, right? How do we make sure, if you're talking about population scale deployments, are we ready with the policies? And all of this is a long-term investment, and we should be in the game for the long term. We should not bother about things, okay, today we are 2 years back, 5 years back, we'll catch up in the long run, right? That's what our game should be. Yeah.
Wow, I think this was a fantastic conversation. Lots of debate points which we can possibly go on about. Thank you all so much for your time. This was a great conversation. Thank you.